I was looking over the outline of the Guru and Disciple book, which was a compilation that my godbrothers Shubhananda Prabhu did long time ago, 1978, 79. I remember him coming to Chicago and giving class from it. Interestingly, he's not active, as far as I know, in Krishna consciousness. In fact, he may be counteractive, but he, I remember at that time, said that Prabhupada had told him that he wanted compilations of his books on different topics, of his books, of his conversations, and so on. And unfortunately, we don't have that. We have spiritual master and disciple, and there's one more, the holy name. He did both of those, and that's it. But there's so many others. So this is something for devotees who are interested in general build. I don't know, you can't say it's writing, but it's compiling these type of compilations. It's a very, very valuable tool. It's not a book in the sense that it reads in a very sequential way, but it's topic oriented and very helpful when you want to look at what did Prabhupada say about something, and it gives you very good information. What the books don't give is a synthesis of everything that's there. That could also be included. But anyway, devotees who are inspired to fulfill Prabhupada's instructions, there's something good over there. So I'm going to just take some certain points from there. I looked over it and I was just inspired. Well, here's something relatively easy before I get into some kind of complex preparation for a class. And we're just going to review a little about what the topic of Guru and Disciple is really all about. I don't know whether it's necessarily a review for everybody, or it may be just beginning information. One thing for sure is that Srila Prabhupada was uniquely emphasized, or he had unique emphasis on Guru and Disciple. I would say that it's much weightier, much more demanding, very, very powerful by comparison to what I saw anywhere else. I've seen a lot of Gaudiya Math gurus and disciples and their interaction, even by one of the admission of one of Gaudiya Math gurus. He had said that Srila Prabhupada's followers really have a very unique Guru Nishta. In other words, faith in Prabhupada. And the reason they have that is because Prabhupada really hammered it into everybody, and Prabhupada really hammered it. So Prabhupada's expectation was quite strong, quite demanding, and I don't believe that when Srila Prabhupada, I think it's probably a point of agreement with devotees, that when Prabhupada talks about Guru throughout his book, he's just talking about himself. But rather, Srila Prabhupada is talking about a basic principle that makes the Krishna consciousness movement work, that makes the guru-disciple relationship work, that makes spiritual advancement work, that makes many aspects of things work. And since I was speaking about Gaudiya Mat, I may as well just return to that, that avoids certain things such as what did happen to the Gaudiya Mat, which is neglecting the order of the spiritual master. And therefore, anyway, in Srila Prabhupada's words, not being as useful as one can be in the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And who knows? And of course, there are other Gaudiya Sampradayas who also share our same philosophy or principles, followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but they really fall out of the purview of the Gosta Anandi, or the preachers, and they fall into the Bhajananandi category, which aren't really strictly, again, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, strict followers in the sense of Lord Chaitanya's will, that Bharata Bhumite Manusa Janmaja, that what to speak of those who are born in India, but then also others, that they preach. Jaredeke Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh, the Pitiviti Achayatra. These are the very famous quotes that Srila Prabhupada repeats over and over again. So this whole idea of being faithful to the person and the instruction of the spiritual master is something that Prabhupada really, really hammered. And sometimes he was incredulous when devotees didn't follow. But at the same time, Srila Prabhupada had this expectation. And he would, I think, Prabhupada would quote Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on 240, commentary to Bhagavad Gita, where says the life and soul. So it's sort of an expression I never heard of until I came to Krishna consciousness. But the order of spiritual masters, the life and soul of a disciple. So we're here talking to 200 plus devotees, and I guess we can all start off with that question: how much are the order of our spiritual master, or the instructions and guidance, is actually our life and soul? And generally, when, for instance, I get an introductory letter or a direct letter, when devotees say, I would really like to be initiated by you, then this is like sort of, for me, starting off on the wrong foot. The issue, as I will discuss here, is not of initiation. Initiation is just a consequence of the relationship. But I want to, and now I don't know, did I understand right that this is going to be visible, or we try to make it visible? If not, I'm reading, and translator, devotees who are listening to the translators, this is in the beginning of Nectar of Devotion, when Rupa Goswami is talking about the principles of devotional service, regulated devotional service, sadhana bhakti. Actually, this equally applies to both regulated and spontaneous devotional service and practice. And Srila Prabhupada writes as follows. Srila Rupa Goswami mentions the basic principles as follows. Now we're starting right at the very beginning, the principles of sadhana. 1, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. 2, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. 3, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. 4, following in the footsteps of great acharyas under the direction of the spiritual master. And 5, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. I just hopped over to Zoom. I'm not reading too fast for the translators. They're able to follow, because I can't see any translators here just now. Oh, I see Tarangini. You're okay, and Rambhadra, they're okay. Okay, then I assume the others are also okay. So Srila Prabhupada mentions 5 things here, and what comes first is what's meant to be done first, and what's meant to really bring to the attention of aspirants for devotional service. So, you want to go to school, well, what do? Well, first thing is you have to have a teacher. A school building doesn't educate you, and even books, especially right in the beginning, are very, very difficult to decipher. So interestingly, the second one is to become initiated and to learn how to discharge devotional service, obeying the orders, following in the footsteps of acharyas, and inquire how to advance. So this whole idea of surrender, I see that sometimes we're in a cultural dead end, and that it's not, surrender is not something that we are culturally educated in. It's not something that's in our nature. I just don't mean surrendering to a guru. I mean just surrendering, for instance, to the principle of duty. So we're living in a world where you don't even have to get married, but if you get married, you don't have to stay married. You can really do anything and everything as long as it doesn't break the laws of the land, which are constantly shifting things. People are not obliged to be faithful or true to their word. I constantly hear it from our devotees who are working outside and employ others. Yesterday, when I went out with some devotees to the swimming pool, and the owner is there, and he's complaining about steady workers. No one's interested in work. No one's really interested in the work ethic, that if I do something, it should be really, really nice. It should be quality, that I should be proud of the work that I do, proud of the person that I am. So that's why I say that this concept of surrender is getting more and more foreign to the type of world that we live in. And I'm not talking about the West, I mean the whole world. India is as bad or worse than the rest of the world or other parts of the world. So this is not a Western phenomena, but this idea that I give myself, and once I give it, I don't take back. I don't take back my word. I don't take back my decision. I just don't take back. So it's whether it's to whomever that is, whether it's children, their obligation and responsibility to parents and so on, or just being true to our word. And of course, it's Kali Yuga. And what's going in Kali Yuga is truthfulness, and truthfulness means commitment. So surrender means being committed. So this already seems to be like a big thing. Last year, I gave this seminar in Sharanagati, right? Yeah, last year, and it was so many devotees responded to that. They found it to be quite helpful and illuminating, but it's the beginning. It's once you make the commitment, then things start to work. This is a very unique dynamic of part of this guru-disciple, and also the way in which transcendental knowledge works, is that it doesn't manifest simply through the exchange of information. So that's why Krishna says, Tadvidhi paripratena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshanti te jnanam. So he gives this requirement of surrender. In other words, to the degree that we're surrendered, to that degree, that same information that everyone, by the way, I'm sitting here in the temple room with quite a few devotees who are all socially distanced, but there's quite a few devotees. But everyone, according to their level of surrender, that same information will manifest differently, proportionately. So it's a very interesting thing. It's not just that, okay, 1 and 1 is 2, and everyone can listen to 1 and 1 is 2, and it's equal for everybody. So transcendental knowledge is nahi jnanena sadrisham. So it is Krishna. And Krishna will reveal himself to the degree that he sees the surrender in the heart. And then we follow with this process of initiation, which really cements this connection. We don't read of initiation in the Bhagavatam. I don't believe there's an initiation ceremony in all the 12 cantos. So it isn't the Bhagavad Vidhi. It is part of the Pancha Triki Vidhi, by which, and we're practicing both of these. Pancha Triki means the principle of deity worship, and actually qualifying ourselves to be able to chant Hare Krishna, which is the Bhagavad Vidhi, free of offense and in a way that we actually get real benefit. So that initiation is, and we have these regulations, the devotees then take vows to follow, and 4 vows, chanting 16 rounds. And of course, there's a whole package involved in all of that, but this is what Srila Prabhupada emphasized. And then once you do it, then as far as Krishna and Guru Parampara is concerned, that's it. Then you're obliged to do it. How many devotees do it? How many don't? In other words, how many actually stick to their vows? I don't have statistics, and not in really necessary, but it's not everybody, which is a shame. But nonetheless, Krishna's expectation and Srila Prabhupada's expectation was that, yes, this is, but you promised. Once you say something, and that's what surrender means, then you do it. Is it pleasant? What are the consequences, and so on? But we stick with something that we have. It's an example that comes up to emphasize different points. It's like having children. You decide to have children, Now one of them grows up to be not the ideal child, or you didn't realize how much children cry at night and keep you up all night long and are so demanding. But that's too bad. You can't change your mind. You can't decide, well, I don't want it. I really, I didn't know what I was getting involved in. So unfortunately, that is what goes on in the world that we live in today. That's what abortion is about, the most horrible thing. And people leave children up for adoption. They leave, just abandon children. And to do it with children means you'll do it with anybody. So then the third one is following the order with faith and devotion. And for us, it's a topic that I mentioned before, but it's something that Srila Prabhupada mentions. Recently, I sent around on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day. That was on the 23rd. Srila Prabhupada's lecture in Los Angeles, where he emphasized dedication to furthering the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then he felt great emotion and obligation to his disciples for helping them in doing that service. I think it's a very, for those who haven't listened to it, you can listen. It's on folio. It's in December, end of December, so 1974. It's very wonderful, but it indicates how much it meant to Srila Prabhupada that his disciples was assisting him in serving his spiritual master and serving ISKCON. And Srila Prabhupada sort of weaved or wed service to Guru and service to the Krishna consciousness movement as being one and the same. And the Krishna consciousness movement may go through its ups and downs, and it certainly has over the years. But nonetheless, that's what it takes to spread Krishna consciousness, and it's only a unified effort that will get results and at the same time sort out issues when issues come up in institutional effectiveness or institutional direction. And then following our acharyas. Now you can't see it, but over here on our wall and devotees in New Brajadam, we have this beautiful parampara painting, or at least parampara from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is our empowerment. This is our connection, not just to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but to all the personalities between him and us. That we receive their blessings when we act according to their desire. And those blessings are very, very powerful. And the last one is Upadikshanti te jnanam, jnaninas tattva. So inquiring how to advance. In seeing these five, I could see that some of them are in relationship to the basic principle of sambandha, then prayojan, then abhideya and prayojan. When we, first of all, start this principle of why is it that I have to accept a guru? Why can't I just connect to Krishna? And obviously, because it's not what Krishna says. Upadikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva. He says, no, you have to go through evam parampara praptam. This is the This is the means to Krishna. And while this is sort of ABC, this is real beginner stuff, but at the same time, we see that we have sometimes very organized new institutional deviation from this principle, that you need to go through a guru, that you can just sort of hop over this guru and go to some other guru, or you just go to Srila Prabhupada, or who knows, go to somebody else. There is somebody else. For instance, we know there's the sort of Ritvik organization who proposed that everyone just hop over to Srila Prabhupada, take initiation from him, and that he's the main spiritual master. Prabhupada never said anything like that. No one ever did anything like that before in the past, not part of our Gaudiya tradition. Then there's others who say Jiva Goswami is our Siddhanta Acharya. So if we really want to understand Siddhanta, we should go to Jiva Goswami, and anything anybody says, whether it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Srila Prabhupada or Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if it doesn't jive with Jiva Goswami, then we should interpret it. We should sort of see that maybe this is just a preaching strategy. So this is more of the same. It's saying that I understand Jiva Goswami better than Prabhupada or Bhaktivinoda Thakur understands Jiva Goswami, and that I'm jumping over those acharyas. So that's another, may not be a movement, but it's certainly something that comes up a lot. And it comes up through initiated, educated, Krishna conscious, educated Vaishnavas. Why? Why does it come up? Why is there a lack of this understanding that you can only see through? You know, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of the telescope. Okay, so you train your eye onto the star or whatever planet you're looking at, and just because you found it with a telescope, now I don't need the telescope, now I'll just look with my own eyes. What are you going to see with your own eyes? So you need to see through that telescope, and it's only with that telescope that the star or planet becomes visible, comes close. And now we're just talking about stars. We're not talking about Krishna. Krishna's a person. So if he doesn't want you to see him, then you can't see him. And this whole idea that we're going to understand Krishna by our own effort, or we have a better formula for approaching or understanding Krishna than that which we've received, that then becomes a real undermining our own devotional service, all in the name of becoming more Krishna conscious. So these 5 criteria that we've listed, when they're fulfilled, then one can actually, and we're very strict about those, we're strict about these really basic foundational principles, then we recognize that yes, we can approach Krishna, we are able to approach Krishna through spiritual master, we're able to understand who Krishna is. And maybe we should be understanding Krishna before we're approaching, because who is Krishna? All right, Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but there's a lot behind Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why Srila Prabhupada wrote so many books, and then there are so many more books all about understanding Krishna. So he is Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means it's not just like, you know, how do you make a chocolate cake? So he's very multifaceted, unlimited, inconceivable. So even to get a conceivable perspective of what's inconceivable really requires this type of surrender, practice of these principles. And one thing is to understand, and another thing is actually to realize what we've understood. So for actually that knowledge to become manifest, and Prabhupada would always use this phrase, service and surrender, so that the two things are there, that we need to be serving Krishna, because ultimately that's what bhakti is all about. Bhakti is about service. Now, service is a physical activity, but originally bhakti is about serving with love. And we're learning how to cultivate the love part by going through the same type of service that those who actually serve Krishna with love, and trying to awaken that loving attitude. And as a result of that, the problems of life become solved. A lot of problems in life, understandably. Being in the material world is already a problem. Being in Kali Yuga is more of a problem. The times in Kali Yuga in which we find ourselves are even more problematic. It's just, and then on top of that, as if there's not enough problems, we make some more of our own just to make sure we don't run out of them. So yes, there are a lot of problems. I was looking at this thing, the Guru solves life's problems. And I think Prabhupada was more emphasizing this concept of birth, death, old age, disease, rather than the emotional, psychological, and so many other issues that we're faced with. And unfortunately, that has to be part of the package, because Manda Sumanda, there are so many obstacles just to getting started in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, a lot of times, I see that devotees' focus, struggle is in this realm of Anartha Nivritti, which is something that we really need to get beyond to really start. Shraddha Rati Bhakti Anukramishasi. Real Shraddha starts over at the stage of when sort of anarthas are more or less gone. So learning the art of devotion, and what does this art of devotion refer to? I understood it as being the, on one side, the etiquette of Krishna consciousness, how we approach this whole culture of Vrindavan, culture of Vaikuntha, and we are really adapting ourselves to a whole cultural change. We definitely live in a bankrupt culture. Even 100 years ago, the world was much more cultured than it is at the present time. But generally, culture is understood to be philosophy applied to lifestyle. So a way of thinking, living, and so on, that's based upon philosophy. Now, we have a very wonderful and extensive philosophy, but how do we actually apply that and put it into practice in our own lives? Yat karoshi, yadashnashi, yadshuhoshi, yadash. Everything that we do, our eating, our working, our dressing, our so many other things. Tat kurushamadarpanam. Then Krishna says, now you should offer all these things to me. And the art of devotion, here is one thing, the deity worship, which is really such a wonderful art to be learned. And of course, there are so many different aspects of Krishna consciousness, the art of being a Vaishnava, which has its externals, and then it also has its own behavioral obligations and practices. The process of chanting Hare Krishna, both in its sort of artistic expression, doing it nicely, that's attractive to others, but actually cultivating the art of chanting Hare Krishna, which really is the bottom line of our abhideya, of our practice. And for that, we learn deity worship. I often look to see what devotees are doing wrong in terms of dressing the deities, because whatever they're going to do wrong dressing the deities, they're going to do wrong chanting Hare Krishna. And if they don't notice things that are in front of them, practically speaking, life-size, they're not going to notice things that are going on with actually no dimensional size in their minds. So yes, devotees need to be aware, and they need to know what quality is, and so many other things. The art of cleanliness. Why should we be clean? Well, once again, if external cleanliness is not there, then how is the devotee really going to be very astute in their chanting of Hare Krishna? And if you can live in a dirty, messy atmosphere, then you're going to be able to tolerate having dirty, messy Nam Sankirtan. So everything's connected and everything's indicative, and it ultimately boils down to this chanting. And the science of chanting is the most important thing that we should learn from spiritual master. And ultimately, in order to be successful in spiritual life, we need to be successful in cultivating these 5 elementary things that we had mentioned earlier. And I'm just going over them again: to surrender, to be initiated, to follow orders with faith and devotion, to follow the orders, to follow the will of the acharyas under the spiritual master's direction, and to inquire on how to advance in spiritual life. So, attaining success in Krishna consciousness, what does that mean? Well, we want to go back home, back to Godhead. And that's Srila Prabhupada's promise. It's an attainment that's available to everybody. I won't go into the details of the steps that it goes to get there, but it really means that in this lifetime, we need to awaken that Nitya Siddha Sabhava. So we need to awaken that dormant love for Krishna that's in our hearts, at least in its beginning stages. So we speak about that, we talk about it to others, amongst ourselves, awakening love for Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada had said that ultimately you can judge how successful you are in advancing in Krishna consciousness. How much do you love Krishna? Parents know what it means to love. They're experiencing it. And devotees, in terms of different relationships, whether it's friendship relationship is one type of love, and so on. So, but how much do we love Krishna and are willing to do for Krishna what we read about that great devotees have done? So this kind of dedication is indicative of awakening love for Krishna. And once again, this will only happen through the agency of the spiritual master. Why? Because there's a mystery. Prabhupada calls it a mystery repeatedly. Mystery isn't something that's not known. It just means, and it's not such an easy thing for us to comprehend how this whole dynamic works. So here's a quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this is one of many similar quotes that Srila Prabhupada talks about this mystery of the descending process. The Lord's mercy descends to a devotee like Brahma, and through Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyas, from Vyas to Shukadev, and so on in the bona fide chain of the cyclic succession. We cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors. They are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. These mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. So it's what I mentioned before earlier, that it's not this is not an educational process in the sense of transmitting information. The information is not actually information, it's knowledge, it's alive. It's a living thing, and as Srila Prabhupada says, in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. So it's interesting that Prabhupada says gradual development. He's not expecting any kind of extraordinary performance, but that to the degree that our service attitude develops, then through the disciplic succession, because this is what this quote is about, Krishna's mercy. It's by Krishna's mercy that we come to realize and understand things that we've heard repeatedly, maybe for years, maybe for decades, maybe for lifetimes, that they become actually, all of a sudden, they actually become reality. They become something that we may perceive. So it descends to Krishna. Krishna's mercy, this transcendental knowledge is Krishna's mercy. It's in Krishna's mercy. And the flow of mercy comes through the disciplic succession. Now, even in today's ISKCON, the idea is that there was a lot of mercy to be had from Srila Prabhupada, but there's less mercy to be had from his disciples, from his grand disciples, and so on, as they act in the role of spiritual master, because, well, no one's like Srila Prabhupada. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that. Certainly, Srila Prabhupada wouldn't have argued that he wasn't like his Guru Maharaj, or that he wasn't like Rupa Goswami, that no one's like Rupa Goswami. And yet, the Guru Parampara works because it itself is Krishna. And if Krishna wants to manifest his mercy, Krishna's coming out of a pillar for Prahlad Maharaj. So if Krishna can manifest his mercy through a stone, he can manifest his mercy through anybody. And to say he can't is to control Krishna, is to try and put the brakes on Krishna, that Krishna can't do something. No, Krishna can do anything, and it will work. The process will work. Even the process will work when perhaps the Guru is not aware of it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes Shukadev, quotes Lord Shiva about explaining how aham veti, sukham veti, that I know the conclusion of Bhagavatam, and Shukadev Goswami knows the conclusion of Bhagavatam, and Vyasadeva, well, he may know or he may not know. Did that become an impediment to us receiving Srimad Bhagavatam? Because Lord Shiva says, well, Shukadev, Vyasadeva may not be fully aware of just exactly everything that he's speaking. He may have not realized it. Shukadev Goswami has. Lord Shiva says, I have, but maybe he hasn't. But we do Vyas Puja. He's our Acharya. No one's going to say, I'm like Vyasadeva. No one's like Vyasadeva. And yet at the same time, the knowledge, the transcendental knowledge comes and it comes down. It works because Krishna makes it work. But it's a mystery of how it works. And to the degree that we have faith in the persons who deliver the message, in Krishna, that he's able to manifest that message. And by message, I mean not just the knowledge, but everything that comes under the umbrella of Krishna consciousness. But it has to come through parampara. And the parampara has to be unbroken. Evam parampara praptam. So in this way, the transcendental knowledge, we get jnana, we receive that knowledge, and then we get, I was going to get into this pratyaksha, paroksha, aparoksha, aprakrita, but then we get really distracted as to the different types of knowledge that are available to us. But both knowledge that is within our perception, and knowledge that's beyond our perception. The spiritual world is beyond our perception. We don't see Goloka Vrindavan. We talk lots about it. We've heard about it, but how do we hear about it? We hear about it because we hear about it through disciplic succession. And similarly, in the way that this mercy comes to us through the means of transcendental knowledge and realization, similarly, sampradaya vihinasti mantrasti, and the mantras. Mantras aren't something that it's a real extraordinary fad. People just go online and buy mantras and repeat mantras for so many silly things. Mantras don't work. They are Krishna also. Abhinatvan namanamino. So the mantra is Krishna, and Krishna has the condition upon which he will actually manifest himself. And if Krishna is not satisfied with the connection that he sees with the disciplic succession, then the chanting of mantras, the study of literature, so many other things may be done, but the result will not be forthcoming. Or the result that will come is that sooner or later, that faith will grow, and with the faith, one can then progress forward. So we're here speaking about the process, but ultimately we always come to the question of what disciple really is. And everybody's a disciple. The guru's a disciple, and the disciple's a disciple. The only person who's not a disciple is Krishna. But even he accepts a spiritual master, even though he's the source of everything, but he accepts a spiritual master in which he learns and he does service. And even that service becomes very austere. You know, Krishna goes out with Sudama Vipra, and he stays out. They go looking for firewood. They get stuck in the jungle in this monsoon. I guess the firewood wasn't going to be very dry by the time they got it back with it. They had to spend the night in a tree. You spend the night in the tree in the jungle because there's a lot of wild animals on the ground. So not a very easy thing to do. Seems like Krishna sort of comes up repeatedly in Krishna's pastimes. He gets stuck on trees and he has to spend the night sometimes in trees, whether it's over there in near, what's it called? The Avanti, although it's actually very far away. It was something like 40 miles away or something, where actually Krishna was found. So they really wandered far. Of course, they were bigger than we are at that time. So the faith, Krishna also accepts spiritual master, and this idea of having faith in the spiritual master. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted Ishvara Puri. They had repeated interactions, and so after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gets initiation, there's no real mention of him seeing his spiritual master afterwards. Of course, he was obliged to go to Jagannath Puri and stay there. Although Ishvara Puri continued to live for, Lord Chaitanya got initiated when he was 16. Then he was in Mayapur for another 8 years, and then traveled for 2 years. And when he settled down in those 10 years later, that's when Govinda and others came, because Ishvara Puri left his body and he instructed him to go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Lord Chaitanya and his spiritual master were on the planet for 10 years, but they didn't have any, at least recorded, interaction. Nonetheless, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he went to the village of his spiritual master, he took some earth, and then Kaviraj Goswami says that every day he would take a pinch of that earth out of the birthplace of Ishvara Puri, and he would eat that earth. I don't think it's necessary that all devotees have to go to the birthplace of the Guru and start digging up the sidewalk and try and get some earth. But it's very symbolic in terms of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying and communicating, that this was his regular habit. So now I'm just reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita about this concept of faith in spiritual master. And Lord Chaitanya, or Kaviraj Goswami, says the following well-known verse: "Although I know that my spiritual master is the servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as the plenary manifestation of the Lord." Srila Prabhupada writes, this is just part of the purport: "Every living entity is essentially a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the spiritual master is also his servant. Still, the spiritual master is a direct manifestation of the Lord. With this conviction, a disciple can advance in Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master is non-different from Krishna because he's a manifestation of Krishna." I'm looking around for someone to actually give me what the actual Sanskrit is here in the verse. "Although I know my spiritual master," that's how it starts. This is in C.C. Adi Lila, chapter 1, 2, 3. So this idea, it's very, very difficult for us to conceive of something that, how is it that this person, and then Srila Prabhupada later, he has this, he repeats this sort of topic. He says, well, someone else may call him my husband, and someone else may call him my father or my son, but he's still the representative of Krishna. And, material vision tends to draw us towards a material perspective and a material perception of things. Did you find it? And although I know that's how it starts. Yeah, what did I say? What was I saying? Anyone remember what I was saying? There's a lot of you here. What was the last thing I said? We've got a lot of good students here.
You said that the material perspective tends to draw you away.
Thank you. Adi Guru, I recognize his voice. And so we see with material eyes, here's God, but we see deities, we see marble. We have faith that, all right, that marble is Krishna. Yadyapi amara, yeah, wait, let me, it disappeared fast. Nishanta Lila sent it to me. Yadyapi amara guru chaitanya radash tatapi jnanena amitanhara prakash. So prakash, and you can look up prakash. Prakash means expansion. So how is that possible? It's a mystery, but that has to be the faith. And that faith needs to be strong because the tendency will be for, well, it's what I see. And yet this is our Siddhanta, this is our philosophy. And Srila Prabhupada used to paraphrase this. I was planning to stop at 8 my time. Srila Prabhupada was generally paraphrased this in a very simple way. He said, the spiritual master is not an ordinary man. And here's another quote. Therefore, Guru should not be taken as ordinary human being. Guru Naramati, Guru Shunaramati. And then Prabhupada now is talking, quoting, paraphrasing. I see that he is like an ordinary man. His son is calling him father. His wife is calling him husband. End quote. That's all right. But because he's giving the right information, he's not ordinary human being. Therefore, he should be worshipped as good as God. Saksad Hari Tvinasumasta Shastri. So we're chanting that regularly. So that's a it's a tall order. It's a tall order on part of the Guru. It's a tall order on part of the disciple. In other words, you have to be as good as God in order to be accepted as good as God. And both things have to be there. The spiritual master has to be bona fide and qualified, and the disciple has to have the faith. But Sakshad Hari, and if that's there, if the Guru Parampara is intact, if the spiritual master is bona fide, then the Sadhya worshipped as good as God. And it's something that devotees can think about. The tendency will be, as time goes along, or rather, as time has gone along in our Krishna consciousness movement, that more and more we will relativize and qualify the position of spiritual masters. And this quote, well, you know, no one's as good as Srila Prabhupada, which is a redundant statement, but it's used to excess for often, sometimes this type of two-tier system that, you know, Krishna works so much through this Acharya, and he will work, manifest so much through that Acharya. Krishna is not restricted. If we restrict Krishna, that's another thing. But Krishna is not restricted, and therefore, in terms of the principle, it will work if the combination is right. So, how one works with that dynamic? Krishna helps. Krishna helps from within because he's the super soul. And just like Prabhupada would ask, how do you know I'm a bona fide spiritual master? And the devotees would say this, that, and so many things. And Prabhupada said, because Krishna's in your heart and he's telling you. So Uddhava points out that Krishna manifests in these two forms. He manifests as the super soul within the heart, and the guru becomes the external manifestation of the super soul. So Krishna is the original teacher, and he's always there, and externally the spiritual master, and internally the super soul. They complement each other. For that understanding to be there, it really requires this type of submissive, humble attitude. I make this point about the relativization because it happened on multiple occasions when Srila Prabhupada was here. You could read about it in Prabhupada Lilamrita. Some devotees lived through that. It's there in Prabhupada's letters. It came from, originated in different quarters and manifests in different ways. But once again, Prabhupada was extremely particular about this, is that this was the motor that's going to make the Krishna consciousness movement work. And this is what was going to actually help devotees advance in spiritual life. But it required certain things. It required that they're submissive and humble. I won't speak more about that. Devotees hear about these things quite a lot. Prabhupada would refer to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, remaining always a fool before one's spiritual master. So here's God, and his guru tells him, you're a fool. You don't understand Vedanta. Well, Lord Chaitanya said, well, you don't understand. Vedashchisar Vedaham. I'm Vedanta personally. There's no argument. So when he told Prakashananda, he said, my spiritual master called me a fool. And he told me, I'm not qualified. You're qualified to study Vedanta. I'm not qualified. He just told me just to chant Hare Krishna. So that's the position. The tendency becomes, as devotees become more senior and the relative years of spiritual practice becomes less and less between them and their guru, that they become familiar. That familiarity is always a risk. But it becomes a real obstacle. Therefore, this idea of remaining a fool, that doesn't mean becoming foolish or acting in a foolish way, but it's that a devotee thinks, I'm not in a position to argue. I'm here to learn. So it's a student. Whether you're in university, whether you're in grade school, you don't argue with the teacher. Just because you happen to, I don't know, be studying for your PhD, but still the teacher is still the teacher. So in this way, devotees render service, and there's quite a bit here about showing honor and respect, because being submissive and humble needs some kind of external display. How do you actually show that, reveal that? I've spoken quite a bit about that before. I don't want to belabor that, but definitely there are shortcuts that devotees take. There are certain things that they ignore or are ignorant of, by which helps them to become submissive and humble, and shows that they're submissive and humble. Because, impressions, you make a lasting impression, or it takes a while to remove an impression. Prabhupada was phenomenal. He, not see somebody, but just on the basis of, for instance, one editor changed one word that Prabhupada wrote, not one word that's in the translate, one word that Prabhupada wrote. Prabhupada started analyzing the disciple, saying that he's a rascal, that he should no longer be involved in the Sanskrit department, just from that. Now, of course, nobody's Prabhupada, and who knows what kind of vision Srila Prabhupada had, but impressions are lasting, and the devotees should know that. And especially when you have, if spiritual master has hundreds, coming on to thousands, what to speak of those who have thousands of disciples, the amount of interaction is very limited, and the impression that one makes in that limited time, it has its effect. To counteract it, you need to, if the impression is not good, if it's good, then that's what's there, and if it's not, then something else. And of course, over and above, one should, we are on time, one should avoid offenses. So when we're considering the offenses to the holy name, then sadhu ninda nam nam paramam paradam vitanute guru ravagya. So third offense is guru ravagya. First is general towards Vaishnavas, towards sadhus, and the third is specific. And avagya means to neglect the order. To neglect the order or instructions. It seems that that's the foremost way in which these offenses are being viewed in this list of 10 offenses to the holy name. It's as we have to be careful. I don't know if you've ever read Tennessee Williams, but there's a play called Glass Menagerie. So menagerie means a sort of a circus or a zoo, and menagerie and glass means little glass figurines. So if you're going into a pottery shop, then you move around really slowly. You swing too fast, you knock something off the shelf, you have to pay for it. So, and they have that, in the window when you walk in to these places. I know because I went to Dalton. Is it Dalton? Adi Guru is that?
Yeah, yes, Guru Maharaj, Dalton, yeah. Dalton
on Oxford Street. Long time ago when I bought pottery looking for non-China china and non-bone china. And they had the sign in different places. So be careful how you move. Whatever you break, you pay for. So, yeah, being amongst the association of Vaishnavas is like a glass menagerie. And whatever you break, well, it's not so easy to pay for it. It's you can't pay for it with a few pounds. And especially when it comes to spiritual master. So, but Yasya Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada, and that's what we're chanting always, and we'll just end with that quote. And this is not from Guru Vastaka, but from Bhagavad Gita, that the mercy comes down, and by the blessings of the spiritual master, one advances. Srila Prabhupada signed your ever well-wisher. I also signed letters, although I write much fewer letters than I used to in years past. But there is a real feeling, inspiration. There is something, I feel it, of what it's like when this wanting to wish somebody well. Obviously, generically, we wish everybody well. But then when it's something very specific that relates to someone for services done, in other words, you feel that, yes, there is this blessing coming from Krishna, and it is released through the desire, at least that's one way that it's released, through the desire of the spiritual master. And it's by those blessings that ultimately we get the result of what we're here for, which is to become Krishna conscious. So Srila Prabhupada writes, one should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because the bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna. If he bestows any blessing upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advanced without the disciple following the regulative principles, or the regulated principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. Just let me qualify. Prabhupada says that you will advance without having to follow principles. Doesn't mean you can break the principles. It means that all the different elements of Krishna consciousness, the 64, they need to be there. Whether they're there or absent, the blessings are enough. This is sort of a paraphrasing of what Jiva Goswami also speaks about in his Bhakti Sandarbha, and I forget how that begins. But he says the same thing. He uses the phrase from Mahabhagavad. He says that by the mercy of a Mahabhagavad, those obstacles in spiritual life that a devotee finds very difficult to overcome can very easily be overcome simply by the blessings of the spiritual master. So it's a real phenomena. I find myself on this end of it, of wishing well and really praying to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada would often say that, I'm praying to Krishna for your advancement more and more in Krishna consciousness. So this idea of praying to Krishna for the advancement of devotees. And then, of course, it may be general, but you also have to understand that it's also personal. And it interfaces on an individual level in a very sort of wonderful and mystical way. And how that happens, Bhakti Churu Swami Maharaj, when he asked Srila Prabhupada, this was when Prabhupada was very sick and departing, but Prabhupada, if you leave, how will we know our Swarup? How will our Swarup be revealed to us? He says, when you're ready, I will come and reveal it to you. So it's very mystical. But we like mystical things. Russians are especially into mystical things. Hungarians are into mystical things. British have their heads a little more on their shoulders, and they're not so mystically inclined, or at least they're not so distracted. But of course, it's mystical. Everyone likes to know that there's a little more than what meets the eye. But actually, in Krishna consciousness, the whole idea here is there's a lot more than what meets the eye. In fact, what meets our eye is very, very minimal. We can't even see material things properly. What to speak of now, seeing spiritual things. So this guru-disciple relationship is one of these things where there's much more than just meets the eye. It's a very wonderful experience. And the more that we surrender to it, then the more that becomes a living reality in our spiritual lives. So I'm going to close, and I thank everyone who's present. And although I didn't really, well, I'm not going to say all the 200 devotees' names. I noticed a few, and thank you for being here. It was a nice experience on my side. I hope you found it elevating on yours. And I don't know when we're going to. Oh, and I saw Natavar. Thank you for that olive oil and the soap. And Shambhihari thanks you for the cheese. Thank you to all the other devotees who are present here and the translators. And I hope we get to meet each other. There I see Shari McNamara as well. And over in the United States, I hope it's safe over there. And wish everybody well. Be careful, all the different things that are going on in the world. And then, well, at least we'll be communicating at some time soon on Zoom, if no other way. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar ki Jai, Jai Shri Shri Bhanitai Vijay Gauranga ki Jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Guru Maharaj ki Jai.